Hello, welcome to Cerulean Arts Gallery. Tonight we're speaking with Christine Stoughton in conjunction with her Cerulean Arts Collective Exhibition, which is on through April 6th. Hello, Christine.
Hi, Mike.
Thanks for being here tonight.
My pleasure.
Please tell us a bit about yourself and the show.
Well, the show is a continuation of my interest in doing the impossible, which is capturing the ephemeral. I explore nature and my connection with nature. And this show looks a lot at memory and how memory changes, and again the fleetingness of memory. And I think the quote that I have at the beginning of the show, which is, "Before you were a cloud, you were an ocean," really captures the spirit of the show.
Yes, you're trying to capture those transient
Yes,
effects of our experience.
absolutely. And, through exploring nature and the changes, and there's nothing more rapidly changing than a cloud. I didn't quite realize it until I was attempting to draw clouds. I spent some time this summer out just studying clouds, and I was amazed at how I'd look at a cloud, look at my paper, make a mark, look up, and even on a calm day, it had changed. So it was very fleeting. So the cloud theme runs in a lot of these images. That is an image transfer off a glass negative, and behind it are monotypes of some of my cloud imagery.
You use a variety of printmaking collage techniques
I do,
in
yes.
your work. Can you talk a bit about that, like how they come about and why you work this way?
I like the magic of and the unpredictable nature of printmaking. No matter how you place the inks on the surface that you're printing off of, once you put your paper down and pick it up, it's never quite what you expect. So you have to react to what it is giving you. So it's not like I can say, I am going to do this and this is what it's going to look like. It's very process oriented, which is why I really enjoy printmaking, because it is a process and it develops as you develop, or you develop as it develops. That is, those
Oh,
are printed and drawn and rubbed images of rose petals, and that's called October Petals. And it's all collaged on, so it's many, many layers. And I printed them in many different ways. And I burnt the edges instead of tearing the edges or cutting them apart, I burnt the edges because it was about, the end of summer, the fading of the roses, they're passing into another dimension. It's a memorial, actually, to my mom, whose name
uh,
is Rosemary, and she loved roses.
huh. And you use monotype a lot.
I use monotype a lot, yes.
Can you describe that process a little bit?
Well, monotype means it's one of a kind, and you put your ink down however you want on whatever surface you want. So I do put my inks down on different surfaces, And you can press objects into them and get some impressions. You can paint with a paintbrush, you can roll on with a brayer, so you can get very different marks. It's really about mark making in as many different ways as you can come up with. And then you print it on paper. But like I said, I do many layers. And so what I start with is never what I end with. And I do a lot of combining. I'll take one print and tear it up and combine it with another print. So I do a lot of collaging with my prints. Those two pieces are different. The scroll is Sumi ink on mulberry paper. And that was actually, instead of just using nature as my inspiration, I collaborated with nature on this because I did this in the rain. So the rainwater became the water that I used in moving the inks around. And I'm pretty excited about it. I could never do it again.
Right. It's that's it.
That's it.
One of a kind.
It's definitely, I could not repeat those marks because it's how the rain fell and how hard it was falling and how quickly I moved and how I swished it around. And I did probably about 20 of these. And the trick was to pull them before the rain washed it all away.
Right.
So it was challenging. I was very wet, but I loved doing it.
One is interesting contrast between the print processes because this is very immediate and in the moment, and you get
Yes,
it or you don't get it, as opposed to the layered contemplative printmaking.
absolutely. Yes. Yeah. So that was done the same way. It was done in the rain. And it has, I think, it could be many things, but certainly it feels like ocean and clouds.
It's titled Sky and Sea.
Right. I would be happy not to title anything, but
Yes, it's a obligatory
it is.
task. Mhm. People don't like untitled too much.
I know. But I prefer that people be free to see
Right.
what they see in the work. But yes.
Well, yours are open enough, I think, that they allow for interpretation.
So that is a monotype with collage. So, and some of that collage part is actually from a lithograph.
Ah,
That's called swish
mhm.
because it feels like, again, water moving.
Yes.
And that also is, it's handmade paper with collaged elements from the working in the rain. And this is a collaged element from a lithograph with, again, the rain imagery on the handmade paper. It's called The Storm, and it's somewhat reminiscent of having to deal with tornadoes when I lived in Oklahoma.
Ah,
I actually grew up, believe it or not,
in Oklahoma,
in Oklahoma, yes. And we had a lot of tornadoes.
I bet.
And this feels like it kind of dropped out from somewhere. And so that's a charcoal drawing. and the blue is behind it, and it's a part of a print.
Huh. It has a very physical quality.
Yeah, very sculptural. Yes, very 3D. I I do approach my work more as a sculptor than I think as a painter. And that's where the collaging comes in, where I really build my images from many different images that I've made and then combine them. That's an etching, an aqua tint, and the slight green in the window is Chincolet, which is tinted mulberry paper that is added at the time of printing. So it's essentially a collage element too.
And you run it through the press,
Yes,
and then it becomes part of
art.
the
Yes.
print.
So where collage is added after you've printed, Chincolet is added during the time of the printing so that it becomes one with it.
So what advantage does it have as opposed to like, putting like an ink color?
Um, well, it's it's more predictable.
Mm.
If I were to ink that, I couldn't get as light a touch, I don't think, as I
Uh-huh.
can with doing the very thin colored mulberry paper.
And then this one started out as a print, but became very sculptural.
It did become very sculptural, yes. I was exploring the idea of veils and mystery and hiding. And so I printed all these different fabrics, inked them, printed them, and then they got torn up and reconfigured in this flowing formation.
Did the box come about? When did the box come about?
It came about as I was trying to figure out how to present it.
Mm.
I thought I was going to frame it, but there was no frame that would work. You couldn't get one deep enough.
Right.
So then I went with the shadow box idea. And then putting it in the shadow box, it needed a darker background to stand out. And by adding the darker background, it became much more sculptural. It is on mounted on a deep foam core, so that in itself has dimension to it.
Mm. So a lot of printmakers are obsessed with the addition, like making an addition of exact, duplicates, but not in your case.
No, not in my case. No, none of these could be repeated. This is actually a viscosity print, which is where you use two different viscosities, two different thicknesses. So
Huh.
one's a very liquidy ink, and the other is a very thick etching ink, and they
Uh-huh.
interact with each other. So you get this very fluid movement. And then I collaged in the cloud imagery on the top, and the bottom is from a lithograph,
Mm.
the very dark bottom part.
So in your statement, you mentioned that you're influenced by Eastern philosophy.
Yes, because of its focus on change and impermanence and simplicity. So all those I think, come into my work. This is a collograph, which is where you make a textured plate, a textured surface. So the background, these heavier, thicker, were plant materials that I actually glued down and sealed so that they could be inked. And when you do that, the paper gets embossed. And so this has a dimensionality to it too. And then I went in with pastel and added some of the yellow coloring. And then on top is what's called a trace monotype. And that these very fine lines, that's a type of print that I then tore, and it's on very thin mulberry and added to the printed collograph. And this is called Grandmother's Garden. My earliest memory is of being in the garden with my grandparents.
Mm.
And that is 3 different types of prints collaged together.
And it's called The Sea Within.
Yes, C as
SEE.
SEE, right. That sight we have within us, the intuition, that essence that allows us to see, to create. And these are 2 monotypes that were done from looking out a window. This is called Out the Chapel Window. And so that was painted and printed. And then I added, I inked a screen, and you can see the screening, and added that on top to give it the effect of a window. I think that's how I did it. Lots of times I really don't remember.
Yeah, I guess it's
I
easy to
tried,
lose track of those
yeah,
steps.
yeah. Sometimes I try to remember to write it down, and other times I don't.
Right, that makes it difficult to replicate.
Yes. And this is, yes, again, a series of windows looking outside. I really like black and white. I like the contrast, the drama. So a lot of my work is black and white.
The So we'll stop again at the first piece, solace.
Yes,
So you do things like this,
yes.
which are very different than the print
Um,
process.
yes, but
I
like
mean,
I,
on the surface. Yeah.
right, on the surface, I think what they have in common is combining, like collage is combining. This is sculpture is combining. So I am a gardener. I spend a lot of time in the garden, and these wrapped vines actually came from my garden. And I attached them all, made the structure, and it's actually based on a dream where I went down into this very soothing deep hole. That's all I could.
Huh.
This opening, I went down
Mhm.
for comfort. And that's where this imagery, I almost always have one piece in the show, it seems, that comes from a dream. So this is my dream piece this year. And again,
And
I really enjoy the cast shadows. It adds a whole different element. It's like a drawing on the wall. So I'm I'm very aware of how the work is going to read with the shadows, because that's,
yeah, they become an important part of the piece.
yeah, yeah,
So it's interesting, pieces like that, you're outside gathering material, organic material. So you're not like in like a studio setting or print shop. You're like, pulling together natural components.
right. But even in my studio, I have just piles of imagery that I'm pulling together.
Hmm.
So it's always assembling,
Uh-huh.
and those
It's
are
not it's
some
not
of,
a sterile environment.
no,
Like,
definitely not.
mhm.
I just expanded my studio space. It's more than twice the size because I ran out of space. So that's one of my cloud drawings from this past summer. It's
Right, which brings us back to the title, Clouds and Other Fleeting Moments.
right. And I hope to do a whole lot more of those. I love mark making, and in my printmaking and in the drawing, it's really about mark making.
Well, it's a really wonderful show, Christine.
Thank you.
We're always excited for your shows.
Thank you.
See what you're doing next.
Right. I'm always curious what I'm going to do next too.
Right. Yeah, well, it keeps it interesting
Yeah,
for sure.
for me too.
So the show is up through April 6th. We hope people come down to see it. Everything's also available on our website, ceruleanarts.com. Well, thanks again for being here, Christine, and have a great night.
Thank you. You too.